All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. I guess that we need to sit up straight and pay attention now. Okay. First on the agenda are the student representatives report, and we have two from the middle school to update us.
Don't forget to turn your mic on.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
So the Alpine ski team is having a banquet up here at the high school to celebrate their win for both teams, girls and boys, who won state champions in February.
The teams had to go for another week on the trimester because of the snow days.
And Moose Island is learning about sports and the history and team origins, while Acadia is learning something similar to Moose Island of the physics of sports and Olympics specifically.
Royal's learning about how to navigate oceans and about ocean currents. And Katahdin's learning about life after school and like the real world, I guess you could call it.
Adulting. On March 15th, kids from the middle school, not everyone, but walked out to honor the kids who died in the Florida shooting and to show that gun violence should stop. And it felt really powerful. Both Thomas and I was there, and we held hands up in front of the school, and we stood there in silence for 17 minutes. And yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Anyone have questions? Yes.
I just want to point out that Naima will be going to Farmington on Friday as she's our representative for the second year at the state GEO conference.
Whoa. And those questions are hard.
They really are.
They really are. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? You guys may leave if you'd like. Next on the agenda is the report from Auditor Bill Hall. This is not Ron Smith.
I have hair. So.
Okay.
So as she said, my name's Bill Hall, William Hall. I'm from RHR Smith & Company. I've worked there 15 to 20 years or so now. Audit manager and part principal owner. I do things a little bit different than Ron. If you have any questions while I go over the pages, feel free to ask. As I usually mention to most school board members, pages 1, 2, and 3 are the most important pages in this document. The reason 4 is where we form our opinion on the financial statements. The 3 types of opinions are non-qualified, qualified, and an adverse opinion. Yours is a non-qualified opinion. That means that there's no information that's being withheld from the document, and there's no type of fraud, no type of issues that we have to disclose in the independent auditor's report. Pages...
we do not have copies. Yeah. Okay, we do not have copies. For those of you who are looking for that report,
You will not find it.
you will not find it. Do not continue to look. And as Bridget said, it is on the website if you want to refer to it. So if you give us page numbers,
It doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter.
Okay. So the pages that follow the independent auditor's report is called the MD&A. That's the acronym for Management Discussion Analysis. Those pages are where management, Donna or Bridget, could put information in there pertaining to their audit report. It's the only pages of this document that management could put any kind of information in. Usually, some schools, some towns, some nonprofits actually do their own management discussion analysis. I believe currently you're using a boilerplate that we put together. And I don't believe Bridget actually physically puts anything other than what we use for a boilerplate. And usually the information that's presented in there takes in the long-term information. So a lot of times I don't go over the information because a lot of times school boards or select board They don't care that, you know, they have $100 million in fixed assets and, you know, $20 million in debt, and this is my net assets. A lot of the times what school board members want to know is what's my fund balance currently at, and on statement C, I know you don't have it, but your fund balance at the end of June 30th, 2017, as a total is at $742,000. Of that $742,000, you used $500,000 towards your FY18 budget, which leaves you currently at about $237,000 of unassigned fund balance. What that means is that $237,000 doesn't have any ties to it. It's unassigned, it's unplanned for, and it's usually used for two purposes. Exactly what you use the $500,000 for, you know, for budgeting purposes. Another purpose is for cash flow. So, you know, if you had a lower fund balance, and I know this actually district used to have a negative fund balance at one period of time because you're trying to fund your accrued summer salaries. I think that you guys fully accrued it about 2, maybe 3 years ago. So you're obviously in the positive now, which is always good for cash flow purposes and for budgeting purposes. And also the state of Maine actually has a state statute that states that RSUs can only maintain a 3% fund balance. 3% of your total budget for FY17 was just under $500,000. The good thing is they only take into account your unassigned fund balance, so you are currently under that threshold. What could possibly happen if you haven't went above that threshold? If you went above it for 3 straight years in a row, the state of Maine could actually withhold subsidy from you. But as long as you don't maintain it for 3 straight years in a row, you have nothing to worry about. And currently, since you're under it this year, it starts all over again. You know, since you don't have this document, I'm going to explain something to you if you do decide to, you know, open this document for some reading. You know, obviously a lot of people don't enjoy reading this document. There's a lot of terminology in it you don't understand. However, if you do, you know, choose to look at this document, I would always recommend to anybody who's going to read this document for the first time to always read Note 1 first. And I say that because that's where a lot of the terminology meanings are. And if you go through that note and then try to read the document, I think you'll get a better understanding of it. Our document's always the same, so if you've looked at it in prior years, it hasn't changed. You know, usually there's a few additional pages that are added to it. Usually GASB, who's the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, who governs the way that we have to kind of produce this document. Usually they have some new statements that they require to put in there and whatnot. So for like last year, I think the only thing that was somewhat new was your retirement disclosures. In previous years, retirement disclosures were usually a page long. Now they're about 6 or 7 pages long, and it requires us to disclose if there's any unfunded liability with your main PERS, or some people know it as mainstay retirement for the teachers and whatnot. And that would be like Note 12 if you do decide to look at it. It's something I usually don't get into. I'd like to also just talk a little bit about what your revenues and your expenses last year looked like for your general fund. You took in about a little over almost $17.2 million. Most of that obviously was local allocation, you know, from the towns. Intergovernmental was the second one at about $4.4 million. You had about almost $17 million in expenses. Most of that was in regular instruction, operation and maintenance, and special education. You transferred $130,000 out of your general fund. Most of that, I believe, went to your food service fund. Yep, $100,000 went to the food service fund, leaving you an increase in your fund balance last year of about $160,000. So you went from $582,000 to about $742,000. One of the last things I'd like to talk about is your food service fund. You know, kudos for the school district having a positive fund balance in your food service fund. You know, it's an actual bad, it's not bad to have a negative fund balance. However, I guarantee probably at least over 50% of the schools in the state of Maine have a negative fund balance in food service. I've seen some in excess of 350,000 of negative fund balance in food service. So it's always good to come to a school district that actually has a positive fund balance in the school. Now, it does take a $100,000 appropriation to get that to be a positive fund balance, but I don't know of many food service programs that don't need some general fund support to be able to maintain a positive fund balance. You currently have, and I'm going to mention this because usually in school districts, this is the highest liability of fraud or mismanagement that I usually have to disclose. You have about $209,000 of student activity funds, meaning your high school, your middle school, and all your elementary schools have checking accounts at their schools that maintain about $209,000. Now remember, that's a snapshot as of June 30, 2017, and it does fluctuate during the year depending on donations and fundraising. But the reason I always mention this fund is that usually, you know, you have secretaries and principals who operate these funds, and they're not, you know, business managers as of Bridget. However, I do believe that Bridget does receive statements on a monthly or periodical basis to make sure that she's keeping an eye on these funds. We also, when we come in, we do a very hard cash disbursements in search on these student activity funds to make sure that there is nothing going on in the student activity funds. Good thing is that it's been a while since I've actually seen any fraud in the student activity funds and whatnot. So, and I don't believe there was any major concerns that we had with your student activity funds. And $209,000 for a district that operates a high school is not a lot of money. I've actually seen that amount of money in one high school before. So for having a high school and a middle school and some elementary schools, $209,000 is not a lot of money. The last thing I'll say about this document is when we actually put this document together, we actually do it from the back to the front. We do that because in the back is where a lot more detail is than what is in the front. So, for example, you have some special revenue and some permanent funds, like your local entitlement money and your Title I and Title V monies. They all flow through your special revenues. Every single one of those is broken down in the back. So if you ever had a question on what your fund balances are in those type of funds, you can always go right to the back of this book, and it'll lay them all out individually. You also have some scholarships and whatnot. Those are made up of your permanent funds. Same thing as the special revenue funds. They're all broken out. They're all single. So if you ever want to know what scholarship had balances in them, you can always go to the back of the book and find out what the balances are for those. I know you guys usually have Ron Smith here. I am actually the one that comes here every year and actually physically does the work with Bridget. You know, we usually come, I would say, May to do a 2-day pre-audit, and then I usually come sometime in August or September and spend 3 or 4 days with Bridget to finish up the field work. And then what I do is I turn in all my information to the financial statement preparers, who actually turn around and turn this into Bridget. You have a very good business office staff. Most of the ladies in there are very helpful. I do consider Bridget probably one of the top business managers in the state, so you're very lucky to have her here. So if you ever have any questions or whatnot, you can always get a hold of Bridget, get my email, get my cell phone number, and give me a call. If you have any questions right now, I'll field whatever questions you have. And I like that.
You didn't read it, so how can we have...
I take it that you have no concerns about anything in our books?
I have no concerns with anything of your books. Your books are very well maintained. You know, it's good to see that you have a positive fund balance in your major funds and whatnot. Bridget also does a very good job with the federal funds at the end of the year to make sure that you're not maintaining any balances in your major funds and whatnot. I just did have a conversation with her, and it sounds like you guys may be getting some bonds for some infrastructure needs and whatnot. It's probably well needed. And I was actually also told that you're going to be going through a new superintendent because Donna's leaving. It's too bad those two work very well together. So, you know, unfortunately, I've gone through, I think, 3 superintendents since I've been doing your audit. So this will be probably number 4, I think, for me. So, but no problems with your audit at all. Bridget did mention that she hasn't received a management letter yet, so I will actually hopefully take care of that tomorrow. If I do have any management comments, they're probably going to be more directed to your student activity accounts, to be honest with you. Because like I said, I go through those things with a fine-tooth comb, and I always find issues. So.
Any other questions that anyone might have?
And like I said, if you need to get a hold of me or send me an email, Bridget has my information. If you ever want to, go over this in depth, I'd love to go over it with you. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now Wendy Alt is going to do a presentation about Melmac.
And I have my able assistants handing out something for you. And we have enough for people in the audience, should you be interested. Oh, you look so excited, Mr. Boston. I know. We love him. Thank you so much for making time on your agenda to discuss the Connect Aspirations to a Plan grant that Maranacook has had since 2005. It's been a great experience working with Maranacook. For those of you who don't know, my children attended this school, and were not here at the time that they could take advantage of this grant in the robust way that students who are enrolled here now can. So I have prepared a document for you. I will run through it and welcome any questions or comments anytime you have comments. The first slide, slide number 1, gives you a sense. I like to refer to it as our roadmap. It's where we started in 2002. And as I said, Maranacook came into the Melmac family in approximately 2005. We had a 1-year gap with them in 2010. But I think it's quite self-explanatory. It really shows you that we have a high school grant that we named Connect Aspirations to a Plan because Maine kids aspire to something beyond high school. They don't always have a plan to help them get there. I'm sure if you ask Mr. Boston to go into his class of 4th graders and ask them, how many of you want to go to college, every single hand would go up. But they don't always know what that means, and they don't always, as I said, have a plan to get there. We also have a grant that targets colleges called Support Early Success in College, and you'll see later why it's so important to fund colleges in this regard so that more students that start college actually finish in a timely manner. The second slide gives you a snapshot into the new strategic direction that we're pursuing. And as a result of the strategy work that we did over the past year, we're going to be taking a break from the high school grant. We're in the process of developing a grant specific to CTEs, but for the short term, we'll be taking a break from funding high schools, but we hope to be back within a year in that regard. But you can see that we changed the names of the grants, but for boosting readiness for college and career and promoting post-secondary success, it's just been tweaked a bit, but stayed pretty true to who it was at the beginning. And then we're also going to be funding a bucket that is really helping to do broader things than we've done with the 2 previous grants. I rent space from the Associated General Contractors of Maine, and Matt Marks, who's the CEO, put together some slides that I thought you as a school board might be very interested in, so I've included them. On slide 3, you can see, no surprise, Maine's demographics are getting older, and our student population is decreasing quite dramatically. I know Donna might have heard me say this recently, but I was at a statewide meeting and I was told if you live in Maine, you're more likely to go to a funeral than you are to a baby shower. And unfortunately, that is becoming very true, as you know, Sean. You can see on slide number 4, Maine's population is aging, and in fact, we are the oldest state in the country. And you can can look at some of the specific information at your leisure. As a result, on slide 5, you'll see that we're not going to have enough young people prepared and ready to take jobs that I will be leaving in the next decade, I and several other citizens in Maine. So we need to really be focused with a laser eye on helping young people pursue some sort of education beyond high school. Slide number 6 is particularly troubling because what it shows is that young people between 16 and 24 are not in the labor force and they're not in school. And so their unemployment rate is growing at faster rates than any other cohort. And it's really hard to figure out what they're doing because, as I said, they're not in college or school and they're not working. Slide number 7 shows you where Maine fares with regard to the rest of New England in bachelor's degree attainment. So you can see that Maine is the only state under the trend line. So when you compare Maine to other states in New England, we do not have the same rate of bachelor's degree attainment. It's interesting, if you look at the state, there are pockets of the state that have high bachelor's degree attainment rates, but rural Maine is really not where it needs to be with regard to degree attainment. Slide number 8, I love to show because high school students and their families really like it because, first of all, it shows the more you learn, the more you earn. And I found a store in Augusta that sells $1 million bills. And so when I talk to high school students, I always give them a $1 million bill and say, it's the $1 million question. If you go to college immediately after you graduate from high school and get a bachelor's degree, you will earn a little more than $1 million over the course of your lifetime. Parents like it because it shows the more their child learns, the less likely they are to be unemployed over the course of their lifetime. And this is U.S. information. So on the next slide, we drilled it down to Maine-specific information. And you can see the same applies in that regard. But why I like this slide is because if you look at diploma or GED and some college no degree, you'll see there's really no discernible difference between earning power if you have a diploma or a GED and some college but no degree. And so that further reinforces how important it is when students go to college that they stay the course and get a degree. Because we hear from our grantees too often that students who leave college early return to their hometown and often are working the same job they had when they were in high school. Slide number 10 is fairly recent information, and again from the United States, but it does show clearly that increased employment opportunities exist for citizens that have an associate degree and a bachelor's degree, and actually decreasing opportunities are occurring for people with a high school diploma. The foundation on slide 11 you'll see is collaborating with the Maine Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators and the Finance Authority of Maine to increase the number of Maine citizens that are filing the FAFSA. The FAFSA is really the gatekeeper to going to college because specifically for first-generation low-income students, if they don't file the FAFSA, they're probably not going to go to college because they can't afford it. And Maine historically has had a low rate of FAFSA filing, especially for lower middle income and higher low income families. They didn't file the FAFSA because they look at the price of going to college and think we could never afford this, so why would we bother? But honestly, if you file the FAFSA, families find out that there really is money available to go to college, and oftentimes it is very affordable. Maranacook is one of the schools that we fund that has a financial aid partner. And Jill Pierce from Colby College has really done great work working in concert with Kim and Sarah to actually come into Maranacook and meet individually with families that are at risk of not filing the FAFSA to get them to file the FAFSA. Slide number 12 shows you a cohort of students that graduated from Chicago Public Schools and how much more likely they were to go to college as a result of simply filing the FAFSA, as you can see compared to those that did not file a FAFSA. Slide number 13 shows you Maranacook FAFSA filing completion rates, and I had the pleasure of having dinner with Kim and Sarah and their coach Nancy Martin tonight, and it was fun to listen to them talk about why your FAFSA completion rates have varied over the years, and they were talking specifically about classes, and it's like, okay, class of 2014, that must have been when, and that's what I love about working with Sarah and Kim, because if you look at data from specific graduating classes, oftentimes they can say, well, this is what was going on at that time, so they really have a good handle on their students. The next two slides show you the best practices that the foundation identified as having an impact on Maine kids going to college, and they're all required as part of this grant. And again, you can look at them. I will highlight some. Again, I referenced Nancy Martin sitting in the back row. She is the coach for the Maranacook grant, and she comes once a month and meets with Sarah and Kim, and they talk about programming, they talk about challenges, and Nancy submits a report to me every month, so I monitor what is occurring here, and have been known to make calls to talk to them or challenge them about, and they challenge me right back, which I appreciate. Every single one of our grants has the biggest challenge of engaging parents, and this is something that I talk to Kim and Sarah about all the time. And to their credit, last night they had a junior parent night, and they made a challenge to the advisee system and said, if any one of you can get a lot of your parents to come to this program, we will either give you a pizza party or a ice cream party. And so good for them. I can't remember whose advisee group won. Liz Gilmette's advisee group won. Did they choose pizza or ice cream? Okay. So college visits, no surprise, are the cornerstone of this grant, and Maranacook has really stepped up and made a lot of college visit experiences for their students. They have a robust sophomore college visit where one day all the sophomores are off this campus visiting colleges. They also have a college tour specific to juniors. And I think this spring you will be taking juniors to UNH and St. Joseph's. So that's coming up. I can't remember the particular day. But you know, they've done a great job of exposing Maranacook students to the colleges that are out there. The state stopped paying for PSATs for sophomores, so Melmac picked it up for all of our grantees. And you can see that at the bottom of page 14, we require that grantees stay in touch with their students after they graduate from high school to make sure that no real or perceived barriers are getting in the way of them pursuing education. And then slide 15, you can read at your, again, leisure to see some of the other best practices. I touched on Jill Pierce. We host quarterly peer learning sessions that are focused on college access, and Kim and Sarah are regular attendees, and whenever they're asked to present, they never say no, and I'm really happy that Kristen is here tonight because she also, before them, was the grant lead, and she always presented when asked at peer learning sessions. You can see on slide 16 where we have grants around the state, specifically on page 17, the names of the high schools that are in the cohort with Maranacook. Before I show you the rest of the slides, I really want to give Dwayne a shout out because I learned very early on working with high schools, if leadership is not engaged in a grant, not much happens. And Dwayne has a really soft hand about being a leader. He stays out of the way, I would would say, but is very supportive of the work that they're doing. And if they run into any barriers, my sense is that Dwayne helps them figure out a way to get around them. So the next few slides are talking about the grant aimed at colleges. And when you look at slides number 19 and 20, you can see again why it's so important that colleges are focused on welcoming and supporting students who are admitted. Because frankly, for some of them, it's a paltry figure that graduate once they start. And for Maine's two-year institutions, you can see we measure graduation rate over 3 years. For Maine's four-year colleges, we measure graduation rates over 6 years. And I remember so clearly at the board level talking about making grants for colleges, and one board member saying, Wendy, why do you talk about a bachelor's degree over 6 years? It's 4 years. But more and more students are stopping out of college, sometimes for really good reasons, sometimes not for great reasons. And so colleges are trying to figure it out, but you can see on both of those pages that many of them have a lot of work to do. Slide number 21 gives you a sense of what we believe are some students who are most at risk for leaving college earlier, and those fall into certain groups of students. First generation college students too often leave college early, and part of the reason is that they don't know what they don't know and sometimes feel totally overwhelmed, and it's easier to bail than to try and figure out how to get around that. Non-traditional students, students who are not well prepared academically, you all know about the number of students graduating from Maine colleges who go to college and are paying for non-credit classes, particularly in math. And so to the credit of the state, we're trying to address that and make sure that more students are college ready when they leave high school. Students who work 20 hours a week or more, no surprise, we have the same challenge with high school students who work 20 hours a week or more, so it's not completely surprising. I love slide number 22, and this is another slide that I like to show to high school students because my wish for them is that they will graduate from Maranacook and go immediately to the college of their dreams, because they are much more likely to go to college and get a degree if they leave right after high school and do that. You can see the cohorts on the demographic described on the left-hand side, and you can see how long it takes those cohorts to graduate. And what I love about this slide is that we can compare what was occurring in 2003 with what occurred in 2012. And for every single one of those demographic categories, it has just lengthened the time that they take to graduate. So the best chance for success is immediately after high school. You can see on slide 23 the colleges that we've made grants to. The foundation offers a scholarship program that is named for two board members who passed away prematurely, and we make this $2,000 scholarship available to every high school in Maine. We established the criteria, but next week, Dwayne will be sending out a letter saying it's time to nominate a student to receive this scholarship. And what is so sad to me is that we've never achieved 100% participation among Maine's high school principals. It's beyond me, but we spend a lot of time on the phone calling people, but not every principal in the state nominates a student to receive this award. The next slide, I am incredibly proud of Maranacook because Maranacook has never missed an opportunity to name a recipient of this scholarship. And Dwayne's so great about asking me to come and present the scholarship as my schedule allows, but I suspect that some of these names are very familiar to all of you. I know as for a fact that some of the students unfortunately started college and didn't finish, but I'm really proud of Maranacook for making sure that every year a student receives a scholarship. And then the next few slides are specific to Maranacook, and this is where if you have questions, I know Kim and Sarah and Nancy would love to help me answer them, but you can see on slide number 28 the amount of money that Maranacook received for this scholarship over the last 4 or 5 years. And then some of the information that I want to make sure you know is on the next few slides. Because Maranacook is tracking the percent of their students that leave in June after graduation with a plan to go to college or to enlist in the military, to pursue a certificate or an apprenticeship opportunity. And so this is the data that they give to us that I want to feed back to you. Because I, again, in the whole spirit of being proud of Maranacook, you can see that Maranacook kids really aspire to do something after high school. And so, you know, if you look at the beginning of the grant from 05 to 09, and then on the next slide, on slide 30, you can see that has continued, other than the little blip is the class of 2016. And if I turned to Sarah and Kim and said, what was going on with that class? They could give me five things that were occurring. But other than that, Maranacook really has done a great job with aspirations of your students. I've also plotted it on the next slide, 31, against the other grants that grantees, the other high schools in the aggregate that received the grant at the same time. And you can see across this slide that Maranacook is a leader in terms of aspirations, again, except for the class of 2016. The other thing that my eyes go right to, the gap, because the gap represents those students who said they were going on after high school and did not go. And so Maranacook historically has had a low gap, and when you plot that against the other high schools that are receiving the grant, you can see that they far exceed. They do a great job of minimizing that gap, except for there were 2 classes, the class of 2017 and 2012, and I'm sure they know what was occurring with those 2 classes. And then the last slide is college access program highlights that Maranacook is implementing in particular. I talked about some of the highlights of the grants earlier, but before I make sure that you don't have any questions, I just want to tell you that in the spring, if any of you have the opportunity to come to the high school during the T-shirt assembly, it's quite a meaningful and emotional experience. To Kim and Sarah's credit, they now invite the middle school to come up, so the middle school kids can see the high school kids that they watch play basketball, football, whatever, receiving T-shirts to the colleges that they've been accepted to. And you do a great job of making sure that, you know, if they're going in the military, they're getting a specific military T-shirt too. So it's not just about college, but it's a great experience that I would recommend that any of you if your schedules allow, that you come to. And then the other thing I want to say about the Maranacook grant is for several years, it was pretty much driven out of the guidance office. I know Kristen had this experience as well, that, you know, they were the ones running the grant. And just, you know, in the last 2 years, Bill Babbitt, who's a teacher here, has really stepped up, and he's now the one coordinating college visits. And then we have a representative from the University of Maine admissions office who is also a member of the college access team. So, you know, I think it's been great to bring Nick and also Bill into the conversations about how do we help more Maranacook kids go on to college or whatever they're pursuing after high school and then stay there. So again, slide number 32, specific to the programs that Maranacook is implementing. I don't want to put words in Nancy's mouth, but reading her reports, I would say that she would characterize it as a joy working with Sarah and Kim, and they really do a great job of asking themselves tough questions. I know I've been part of conversations after parent nights. It's like, Wendy, why didn't more people come to our parent night? You know, you're lucky to have them, and it's been wonderful working with Maranacook. So thank you. And do you have any questions? I'd be happy to answer them. I know they would also.
Alex.
I see that many of these programs are geared towards going to college. What about kids who want to pursue the trades?
Yes, and so we lump anything beyond high school into the word college. And so it's very much focused on going into the trades as well. It's any education beyond high school that has an education credential. So if you want to pursue a certificate program, an apprenticeship opportunity, enlist in the military, you want to go to a 2-year or 4-year college, it's all valued. And you can see by the color codes what's separated, like yellow means something and green means a certificate program or the military, but it's color-coded. So what we have found is that when you say the word college to students, they know what that means. But when you say post-secondary, they sometimes look at you like a deer in headlights, like, what is that? So we use the word college. There's a movement in the state right now to call it a credential of value. So, I mean, I don't know how many 17-year-olds would know what a credential of value is, but so thank you for asking that question so I could clarify.
Does anyone else have a question for Wendy? Thank you, Wendy.
You're welcome.
For the
Again, thank you for
presentation.
your attention to this very important dilemma that we have in the state, and I look forward to working with Maranacook again in the future. So, thank you.
Very interesting data to look at. Thank you. Are there any additions or adjustments to the agenda?
I have none.
Anyone else? All right. Citizens' comments? All right. Into the action, discussion, informational items. First of all, it is the approval of the minutes of the March 28th meeting.
Make a motion that we accept the minutes for March 28, 2018.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, on the motion to not fund the uniforms, I believe it reported inaccurately who had opposed that motion.
Okay.
I believe I opposed it. I don't know of anyone else that did.
Adam, did you, it's recorded that you did not. Okay. So it should read 9 in favor, 1 opposed, Twitchell. Any other items? Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as amended? Okay, unanimous. Thank you. Consideration of out-of-state trip college tours.
Make a motion that we consider out-of-state trip to New Hampshire and Maine.
Second.
Discussion. And I
What is
see.
CR2 squared?
Where are you?
Oh, I'm not on the right one?
I don't think so. Not yet.
Okay.
And I see this is funded by Melmac. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving? Unanimous. Thank you. Field trip to, for the gifted and talented art students.
Make a motion that we accept out-of-state trip for gifted and talented at the Boston Museum.
Any discussion about this one?
So what does CR squared mean?
Create.
It's a standard.
Yeah.
It's a standard.
Any discussion? All those in,
There's only 16 kids in that class? It looked like more than 16.
in the GT program for art?
Yeah. I mean, all the artwork that was up there?
I'm not sure, but it's, the numbers are limited by the state as to how many can be in the GT program.
It's also grades 6 through 8, so.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Consideration of out-of-country travel.
Consider, make a motion to accept out-of-country for Paris, France in early December 2018.
Any discussion?
Okay.
Yes.
Is this different from the advanced program, or is this an addition to the
I believe so.
And is this in the break period, or is this going to be 2 weeks out of school?
Early
That's
December.
Out of school.
Out of school.
And what's the cost per student?
$24.95.
Is there an exchange program? Or French students come back?
No, I don't believe so. I believe it's just a
So-
trip.
This is different. Gap is the only one that, Gap,
French has had it.
oh, French has had, I'm sorry, okay,
But this isn't an exchange.
okay. Any other questions?
So are 10 students going, or is those squiggly lines supposed to be straight?
Approximately. Those squiggly lines mean approximately.
Yeah. Somehow, somebody has to explain to me what happens to the student missing 2 weeks of school. Some principal. You want him to miss 2 weeks of school? Is that what you want?
I support the trip. I'm not crazy about students missing a week or so of school, but I know they're on the hook for making it up, and they always make up the work. So it's really extra work for them.
You expect that to happen?
I expect them to make it up?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you think they can make it up, that's fine.
Yep.
I worry about, it's not going to be in front of an instructor or anything.
Well, one of their instructors is going with them, or actually two of their instructors. But, you know, I'm sure the trip will be focused on cathedrals and art museums and stuff like that.
So the chaperones is a teacher?
Yep. Both.
So we're paying their salaries while they're gone.
They're working while they're gone.
And we have to
24.
hire 2 substitutes.
Yep. Yep. I mean, it's you know, I know it sounds glamorous to go to France, and, you know, it certainly is nice.
Sounds like a honeymoon trip for somebody.
Well, chaperoning 10 kids, you know, they're going to be working, you know, like Betty said, it's a 24-hour a day job in a way.
Yeah. There's
They'll be working, yeah.
There's no resting for them.
Yeah.
Even when the kids are sleeping.
Yeah.
There are things going on usually.
So really, hats off to them for being willing to do it, to be away from their families and take that on.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor of approving this trip? All those opposed? Abstentions? Did you get that? And the abstention was Alex. All right. Policy, second readings.
The Policy Committee met on March 27th to review the policies for second reading. There were no suggested changes from first readings. So we have Policy BEDB, School Board Meetings and Agendas. The Policy Committee recommends approval of Policy BEDB.
Make a motion that we accept BEDB as written.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor? It looks unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Policy IJJ, Instructional and Library Media Material Selection. The Policy Committee recommends approval of Policy IJJ.
Make a motion that we accept policy IJJ as written.
Second. Questions or discussion? In favor of approving policy IJJ? Unanimous.
Policy JHB truancy. The policy committee recommends approval of policy JHB.
Make a motion that we accept JHB truancy as written.
Second. Any questions? Comments? All those in favor? Okay, unanimous.
Okay, the next policy I'm passing out right now, policy JJIF, management of concussions and other head injuries. The policy committee recommends approval of policy JJIF. It just didn't get included in your packet.
Make a motion that we accept JJIF, management of concussions and other head injuries as written.
Any discussion? There was one change that was made by the policy committee on the second page. And any, all those in favor of approving the policy as written? Okay, thank you.
Policy JLDBG, reintegration of students from juvenile correctional facilities. The policy committee recommends approval of policy JLDBG.
Make a motion that we accept JLDBG as written.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor of approving JLDBG? Unanimous.
Policy JRA, student education records and information. The policy committee recommends approval of policy JRA.
Make a motion that we accept JRA as written.
Second. Questions or comments? All those in favor? Unanimous.
So now we go to first readings. On March 27th, the policy committee met to prepare the following policies for first reading. No vote needs to be taken on first readings. But again, if you have any comments or questions about these, please call the office so we can pass these on to the policy committee for their next meeting. So we have policy EBCE, school closings and cancellations. The policy committee reviewed the MSMA policy. This is not a current RSU 38 policy. The committee reviewed the MSMA sample policy, and one sentence was added regarding school board meetings. The committee recommends policy EBCE for first reading as presented. Then we have policy GCOA, supervision and evaluation of professional staff. This policy was reviewed as part of the process of reviewing older policies. The committee reviewed the MSMA sample policy, and it was agreed to move the MSMA sample policy forward for first reading. Policy IMDC, observance of religious holidays. The committee reviewed the district policy in light of a recent citizen request regarding the observance of religious holidays. The committee reviewed the current policy. There is no MSMA sample policy. The committee took into considerations the suggestions made at the March 14th RSU 38 board meeting and revised the policy as presented. The committee recommends policy IMDC for first reading as revised. The list of holidays, you'll remember that Mr. Fine provided us with a list of holidays, and they would be attached to the to the policy as an exhibit so that staff members, including coaches, can be cognizant of the list as they develop their schedules. So it'd be like attached as an R, a regulation. Policy KI, visitors to the schools. This policy was reviewed as part of the process of reviewing older policies. The MSMA sample policy was also reviewed. Agreement was to recommend the MSMA sample policy with Section E and Section I of the RSU 38 policy as other minor revisions as indicated.
All right. Does anyone have any comments about the first reading policies here? Again, please, after you read them another time, if you have any comments, please refer them to the office so that we can take it into consideration when we meet as the policy committee. All right, consideration of the revised LAO plan.
So LAO does not stand for anything. It's the name of a person that was involved in a court case. So each district is required by the state to submit a LAO plan every 5 years that addresses meeting the needs of students with limited English proficiency, from the identification of students, to services provided, to assessing progress, to the requirements of the ESL staff. Diane Wadsworth is our ELL teacher, and she has reviewed the plans and made recommended changes and updates. I recommend approval of the RSU 38 LAO plan as submitted.
You want us to approve this right now?
Mm-hmm.
So I make a motion that we accept this LAU plan as written.
Second. Discussion?
I got many discussions.
What, you said that there were some changes.
Mm-hmm. There were some changes. The state score for students to be dismissed has gone from a 6 to a 5, so you'll see the WIDA access scores are all changed to reflect that change. That was, I believe that was the big change that was in there. They've changed some of the terminology, but basically it remains the same.
Okay.
So my turn?
Jeremy?
Can we, in the future, do some red line changes so we can see what's being changed?
Mm-hmm.
It would just be easier to track the changes if we could see it without having to quickly scan through it. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Gary?
Yeah, so page 1. I tried to figure out what this LAU plan was on page 1. There's an asterisk as you get down 3/4 of a page. That asterisk should also appear at the top. And it should also have the date and the site information so you could look up the law. It's missing.
Okay.
So on page F, it describes LAU, and you still have no clue what LAU is.
What page are you on?
F on page 2.
Okay.
As you go,
F said LAU is an informal reference to the Civil Rights Act that requires school districts to provide special assistance to English language learners. That's what it means.
Well, I think Gary's looking for more information
then just,
than that. I mean, it's
I mean, you come out with something like that, and it should tell you exactly what it's all about. And then as you go along, it goes over on page 6 of 7, and it finally describes ESL student files will be maintained in a file in the superintendent's office. And I'm thinking, you got a big bunch of files for a bunch of kids, which has a record, and I don't think you want it in your office.
It is in our office. Yes, it is.
Actually in your office. Is
In that
it
closet.
under lock and key?
Yes, it is.
Wow. I thought somebody else should have it. Is that where it really belongs, though?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I just read it and I said, someday you're going to get a bunch of kids. So if you keep going, it does have, maybe I went too far. I went too far. So we're done with that one.
Okay.
So those are my comments on that. I think it's a legalese document, which does not address what it really helps.
I'm not sure what more you could do to define LAU or allow. because it is an English language
Yep.
learner.
It really does talk about how we identify students in, under Section 7, how we assess them under Section 8, the record keeping we have to do under Section 9, notification under Section 10, and the exit criteria is that access test where they have to score 5.0.
Yeah. I was surprised Ryan was not involved in this.
It is not a special ed program.
But they'll be his students.
No, they won't. No.
No.
They generally do not end up in special ed.
Occasionally they do, but the English as a second language is not the reason that they end up in special ed.
No.
Special education. Yes, David.
To me, that is a common misconception where on the sitcoms you see someone yelling slowly in English to someone that speaks a different language. That person may have a doctorate, but because they do not speak our language and we do not speak theirs, the conception that they would be in special ed or it's a special assistance, so in that sense it's a special ed, but not because of a learning. Well, it is a learning disability. Okay, now.
No, it isn't. It's not a learning. It's not
it's
considered a learning disability. No.
Yeah. Right. They are very able to learn.
Yes.
They just don't understand what we are saying. Okay, any other comments?
So I think those things should be improved. That's what I say.
Okay, is there, we have a motion on the floor to approve the LAO plan, and it was seconded by Kathy. All those in favor of approving the LAO plan? All those opposed? Abstentions? Did you vote to approve? Okay, okay, I didn't see a hand.
I just think
Thank
that
you.
those ideas should be improved, that's all.
Okay, thank you. I didn't see your hand, I'm sorry. The interlocal agreement for the Regional Service Center.
Okay, so Superintendents Gary Rosenthal from Winthrop, Bill Zima from RSU 2, and the DOE appointed facilitator Mike Cormier and I met several times. This is part 2 of the Regional Service Plan application. You'll remember that we received over $16,000 in our ED 279 for putting in part 1 of the application. So we have met, and we have met with an attorney from Drummond and Woodson, Dick Spencer, to create this interlocal agreement. The name of the Regional Service Center would be the Kennebec Valley Student Supports Regional Service Center. The service center would be managed by the superintendents on a 2-year rotating basis. The 3 superintendents would comprise the board of directors, and all decisions would be made by the board. The agreement is for 2 years and then would be reevaluated at that point. Services provided by the center would be a summer school program for credit recovery and standards proficiency, a joint program of co- and extracurricular activities. For example, we have a debate team. The other 2 schools don't have debate teams. So if they had students that wish to be included through the Regional Service Center, they could be included in our debate team. That's just one example. A joint professional development program where staff would meet it would give us the opportunity to perhaps have higher level speakers that would come and work with our staff. So it would be a joint professional development program and a joint program for recruiting, training, and retaining qualified substitute teachers. Other services might be added as we proceeded with the service center. Members may decide to discontinue purchasing services from the center, and with a 90-day notice could discontinue their membership fee. The membership fee would be per student, $5 per student. There's a withdrawal clause. You'll remember we talked at first about the concern about not being able to withdraw. There is a withdrawal clause in this agreement that Drummond & Woodson has run by the DOE that apparently they will accept. So there is a dissolution clause. You remember that we did, again, receive that $16,700 in state subsidy for our submission of Part 1. And if this plan is approved, the service center itself would receive $97,200 for the first year for funding. Part of that would be legal fees, part of that would be to our facilitator that helped us set up and to get our programs up and running. I don't know about after that first year what the funding would be. The RSU school board needs to vote approval on this Part 2 application before we send it in, and then the public would need to vote on it. There would be a warrant article at the annual meeting where it would need public approval. We need to submit the board-approved document by April 15th. So this is where we are right now, and there is a wording for the motion in your folders. I have a nice
motion to
book on interlocal agreements if anybody wants to read it, prepared by Drummond & Woodson. Sorry, go ahead.
I move to approve the interlocal agreement for the Kennebec Valley Student Supports Regional Service Center in the form presented to this meeting, to authorize the chair to sign the interlocal agreement on behalf of the RSU 38 School Board, and to authorize submission of the interlocal agreement to the Commissioner of the Department of Education for approval.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Okay. And you will see on the last page, there's the budget.
All right, questions? Lucas?
No, go ahead.
Well, I mean, so we're looking at potentially $97,000 in state funding next year to pay for additional administration and the setup of the interlocal agreement. My question is that really just getting us on? What are our students and our taxpayers really getting in terms of benefit from that?
Those different areas that I talked about.
They're listed on page 6.
I've read them. I'm still just trying to figure out what it means in terms of.
So right now we don't have a summer school. The high school offers. The high school offers, we usually have an ed tech who comes in the summer and perhaps works with students for a week. This would afford us the opportunity to set up a summer school with certified teachers where our students could go to for credit recovery and for standards recovery. So the service center would organize the summer school. So that would be huge for us. None of our 3 districts have technical summer schools. So that would be a huge piece. The co-and extracurricular activities for the students, probably that would involve some transportation so that if our students wanted to participate in something over in Monmouth, they could do that. Right now, for substitutes, we are enrolled in the ASOPS program. All of the districts are having issues with subs, trying to get subs. Frequently, a sub will sign up to sub for our district, and then because another district might pay more or be closer to them, if they get a call from that district, they cancel on us and go to them. This would be one system where subs would go in, and they could go to Winthrop, Monmouth, or RSU2, or to us, so it would organize that system. We're also hoping that it might be a little less expensive if we signed up as a regional center for that system. We don't know that for sure yet. Really, there would be lots of opportunities for us to partner with the other districts. As far as paying administration, the 3 superintendents decided that we would do a rotating 2-year for no fee. There would be no payment for that. Down the line, if it became a larger operation, we might have to hire an executive director, but there's not a plan for that at this point. We would have to change our interlocal agreement.
So I guess my question is, in relation to the program such as summer school that we are increasing, although we're sharing the cost over 3 districts, it's going to end up costing more money than what we're currently doing, correct?
So that's where the $97,000 that would go to the regional service center would come in.
For 1 year?
For 1 year.
Okay.
That means you got to make sure the bills get passed for the following years. So, when I read the document, just reading the document, it says the board of directors, but it doesn't say how many of those board of directors are. I mean, it's, right now, I understood what you just told me, it's the superintendents, but that isn't what this says. What it says that we could have more board of directors in the future with this legal document, not you 3.
The regional service center shall be governed by a board of directors composed of the superintendent of schools of each member or superintendent's designee.
I think you're just reading the...
That's on the bottom of page 1.
Right, I'm looking
And then
at
if you get into it farther, it explains our specific service center, which says that the board would be composed of...
I think there's a lot of good things in this.
Yeah,
I hope you
well-
understand that. So, the summer
I really
school-
pursued this based on direction of the board, so you have to understand that.
But it also gives a joint professional development program for our teachers. And I don't think everybody understands that. But somehow, that money has to come out of the 97. So then it goes over to 14, item 14 on page 4. I think the annual membership fee, I see you put it in the financials, but somewhere like a member that discontinues purchasing all services, it says will be required to continue paying the annual membership fee. And we don't actually, in the document itself, it doesn't just tell that it's $1,000 per school.
No, it's $5 per student, except for the first year when we know we're getting that $97,000. We decided we probably didn't need the $5 per student at that point, so.
So, the
It is
membership-
$5 per
The
student.
annual member, is that, so this is student down here on 14? I don't think that's what.
$5 per student is the membership fee. It's based on student enrollment.
Okay, but I don't see it. That's my problem. Under 15, I don't see the $5 highlighted. Under 15, non-member purchasing the service. And they also talk about political subdivision. I have no clue. Are we trying to do something in the political realm? Or what are we trying to do?
No, they're just giving a list of non-members that might participate. And so it could be a school administrative unit, it could be a political subdivision, it could be a public
What is a
entity.
political subdivision in this thing?
We're, at a school district is basically a political subdivision.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. And a town is a
The
political
town,
subdivision.
right, municipality.
Okay. Well, I just tried to figure out, I thought maybe a party was coming in here. As I turn her over, sure. So on 7, under CI, the annual membership fee and the annual service allocation fee shall not be assessed against those members that have elected not to purchase any function, programs, and services from the regional service center. So is that trying to say if only we need it, we pay and nobody else pays, or?
Where are you?
Right here. Page 7.
Okay. No, it says that the members shall pay their membership, so, unless they choose not to partake.
In that one section of whatever. Somehow, and this is all state funds right now, which means if Lucas can't get this thing passed every year, that we don't get any funds, right?
Wait, you have a lot of power, Lucas.
Well, I just worried about the same worry you have. What happens to this unit once the state funds dry up? And you think it's going to be a one-time thing, or?
When has the state ever not come through with funding that they've promised us?
So I think at that point, we would probably dissolve the regional service center.
Okay.
And,
All right.
and we do have an out for doing that in here, so.
Yes, I did see that.
Yes. I mean, I think you as a board could decide at any point that you wanted out.
Then we could get out.
Yes.
I saw that.
Yes.
And it's not dependent upon, I know that from attending the workshops this fall, if someone wanted to pull out, if it meant that the others couldn't continue with the services, then they couldn't pull out. Is that still?
I hadn't heard that, so.
Okay.
In here. I don't believe that.
Yeah, okay.
So you could stay a member and decide not to partake of any of the services and still pay your membership fees.
Okay.
Or you could petition to withdraw from the regional service center.
Okay, there's no penalty.
No.
Okay.
So on page A1, the thing that really took me by surprise, it says executive director.
So that would.
55%.
So that would be if the regional service center, say this got so big that it was not manageable by the superintendents. So then they may decide, the regional service center may decide that it needed to hire an executive director.
And he gets 55% of the 97,000?
No. The state would pay 55% of his salary.
Oh, the state would pay.
Yeah.
Maybe we should put state behind 55 so that we know where to look for the money. You know what I'm saying?
Well, as Lucas says, when has the state never paid?
Adam?
Is there anything that we do with these two districts now?
What?
Is there anything that we do with these two districts
We
now?
do some sports team. That's about it.
And then the other question is there any staff or administrative recommendations? I mean, the good points, the bad points, and not so much the bad points, but it's just your opinion as far as how is your working relationship?
Oh, with the other two superintendents? Well, two of us won't be here.
Yep.
Bill Zimmer's great. I find that the superintendents work very well together. You know, we're in regional meetings together. We work on the CATSI board together, the 3 districts. So it's never, to my knowledge, been a problem. It certainly hasn't been since I've been working with these people. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future, so I can't promise that.
I guess my question to you is, without this thing from LePage with regionalization and the service centers, would this been a direction that you would have explored without the board moving you that way?
It may have been as far as, well, again, we do some athletic things together with cross districts. It may very well have been with a substitute teaching piece, because that is becoming a problem for all of the districts. We talk a lot through the Western Maine Collaborative about professional development, and through the Western Maine Collaborative, we do a lot of work with professional development opportunities. So I can see that if you provided something closer to home, that people would probably participate in it. So I think that would have been a good piece. And the whole credit recovery and standards recovery is an issue that we haven't, none of the 3 districts really have the funds to address. So again, we have a really short period where students can come in and do credit recovery. But I think hiring a certified teacher to oversee that would make it a lot more available opportunities for our students. So there are a lot of nitty-gritty details that just there hasn't been the time to work out. But I do think that it's a good opportunity.
It is. It looks good to me overall.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of approving the interlocal agreement for the Kennebec Valley Student Support Regional Service Center in the form that is presented at this meeting? Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Thank you.
We'll send that to the
And now
DOE.
we get to the budget update.
Budget. So, good news. We received notice of our health insurance increase, and it is 4.85%, which means we can reduce our budget by $43,016 for health insurance. So it would have been nice to have gotten a 0% increase, but 4.85 is better than 10 and better than 7. So it does give us a decrease. Bridget and I reviewed the equipment and projects budget with Sean, and we have moved some more items to purchase this year or projects to complete this year in order to reduce the FY19 budget. And you'll see a list of those on pages 9, 10, 11, and 12 in your packet. I had to go in and hand number, paginate the pages today. Donna was at a conference. So. You will see some parentheses that say FY18, and those are all things that have been moved to this year's budget. So we have taken them out of FY19 and will do them and purchase those things in FY18, the budget. It's divided, those pages are divided into equipment and projects. Sean is over teaching welding, so when we get to the end of this, if anybody has any questions, he said we could go pull them out of his, he's teaching welding for adult ed, so we could go pull them out of his welding class and he would come back and answer your questions. So if you have any questions about that, we'll get to that in a bit. Last week, the board voted to eliminate the $10,600 for athletic uniforms, so that has been reduced. That amount has been reduced. On Monday morning, the Facilities Committee of the board, should I say except for Caleb? Sorry. Met with Tyler Barter from Oak Point Architects to discuss the needs assessment report, which, as you saw last week, was like this thick. And you do have the minutes from that meeting in your packet. It was a very interesting meeting. So the committee worked with Tyler to identify priorities for the bond. We worked in 3 different areas: priorities for the bond, possibilities for projects for revolving renovation projects, and projects that we might work through Efficiency Maine. So the projects that this is all just draft. The projects that we talked about slating for the bond might include district paving, including Millard Harrison Drive, Manchester heating, ventilation projects in some of the schools, the Wayne septic, the Wayne boiler, high school roofing, and an ADA accessible bathroom in Manchester. Possible revolving renovations projects might include replacing lock sets throughout the district, exterior security card swipe systems, and updating the fire alarm systems. We talked about lighting, and Tyler thought that was possibly, we could address that through Efficiency Maine. So looking at the projects in the FY19 budget, there really wasn't anything that we could take out of the FY19 budget and that might be covered in the bond. So that was a good discussion. So at this point, our version 4, and if you look on page 1, if you could write version 4 on that, page 1 is the general fund school summary budget, and this is version 4. The budget's reduced to $17,985,749.45, which puts us at a 4.49% increase over FY18. And if you look at page 3, you'll see the total dollars needed under, if you go down almost to the bottom, the subtotal property tax revenue line, it's now stands at $13,044,857, which is down from version 3, and an increase of $405,106 over FY18. Then if you go over to page 4, which is really the back of that green sheet, it breaks it down. If you go all the way down 4 rows up from the bottom, you'll see the local percent decrease from 2018-19, and you'll see the 4.36% increase to Manchester, 3.95% increase to Mount Vernon, 1.61% to Reedfield, and 2.64% to Wayne. So that's based on the 4% increase. The summary of budget differences from the FY18 to the FY19 budget to date are on page 5. And so you'll see the increases and the decreases. So this is just budget to budget. And then page 7 shows the budget reductions. Sorry, page 6 shows the budget reductions. Page 7 shows the budget progression to date. And you'll see we're down to version 4, 4.49% over FY18. And then again, page 9 shows the equipment, eliminated the equipment that's still in the budget. Page 11 are the projects. And on page 12, that continues on, and you'll see the summary of the projects eliminated. Again, if you look at the parentheses that say FY18, those have been moved to this year's budget. So at the last meeting, at the last budget meeting, 2 new positions at the high school were discussed. So I've asked Dwayne to talk about the needs for the Ed Tech 2 and the social studies teacher.
All right. Policy IKF, which was passed by the board last year, has added an additional 1 credit requirement for social studies. This 1 credit increase comes in the form of half a credit for social studies electives and a half credit increase for teaching financial literacy. And that's being placed on the social studies department. The position is really a matter of compliance, as our current freshmen are required to have 4 credits as opposed to the previous 3 credits. The social studies department has 4 teachers, which already have full-time teaching schedules. One of the teachers teaches a half credit course above their contracted teaching load by choice, but we're already maxed out, or they're already maxed out. Social studies teachers have asked for this new teacher because they feel they're maxed out, and adding the additional credit is not feasible for them. Benefits of having the additional teacher include manageable class sizes, ability to offer our policy required courses, ability to offer our legally required course, financial literacy. If the position is not approved, many of the classes will be above 20, some will be 25. We would not be able to offer financial literacy and some of the electives. So that's where we stand with the social studies position.
Any questions about the social studies position that's in the budget? Okay, thank you.
An odd one. So from what you say, it would not be possible to cut out the electives and rearrange other things to try and fit it in that financial literacy?
No, previously, in previous years, we have three credits of requirement for social studies. As part of policy IKF, which was passed by last year's board, it was up to 4 credits, an additional half credit for electives, and an additional half credit for financial literacy. So it's not possible to juggle those around.
Betty?
Yes, Kathy.
So last week I asked you about how, through the curriculum committee that I'm on, when we talked about the social studies curriculum, at our last meeting, they talked about meeting some of the standards in some of the other content areas. Can you talk a little bit about how that might happen?
Sure. There's 1 credit that cuts, 1 standard that cuts across the content areas, and that's a research credit. I would hesitate to moving that out of social studies. I think it belongs in there as it belongs in science and the other content areas. It gives us gives students multiple attempts at it. And I don't know if Nancy Nancy wants to talk about this. That's what I have. They're already maxed out. The other teachers are maxed out with teaching standards. So I'm not sure how we'd move it around, but Nancy may have an idea.
That's a good explanation, I think. There is the research piece, as you talked about, is one of the main places now where they evaluate students, and some of the writing standards that are assessed across the curriculum. But you couldn't, even though students get instruction and research in other content areas, it's probably not the same as what they need within that discipline for writing arguments in social studies. So I'm not sure it would go the other way, that you could cut that out of their courses. That would kind of defeat the purpose. Does that answer your question, though?
Not really, because I'm really thinking about how you can integrate more social studies, English language arts, just so that we could continue to use the staff that we have while we're still looking at standards and how students are going to meet those standards.
I think it's a viable question, but the teachers that we have are currently teaching standards for their content area. So English teachers are filled up with teaching Common Core English standards, math teachers and so on. There's no place to push those social studies standards.
So do you have any plans in the future to look at integrating any of the standards so that students are able to meet those standards in a variety of ways, and not just necessarily social studies, but I'm just wondering what the plan might be for the future as far as integrating some of those standards are.
Our biggest area where standards are integrated is within social studies from English, and Nancy may want to speak to that.
Well, I think we did. I mean, they do a lot of reading in the content area in science and social studies, and writing arguments, which is especially in nonfiction areas and research areas, but it doesn't, right now they haven't started to look at doing it the other way. That is replacing English units with social studies focused units. I think that in the middle level, they do a lot of it, and they do it really well, but most of the teachers have a broader preparation than most of our secondary teachers have one content area preparation. So it would take a lot of restructuring and PD, I think.
I agree. I think currently, Nancy showed our NWA scores last week or the week before, and that's a result of teachers teaching their content area standards. It's certainly something we can look at more in the future, and would be willing to do so.
So if you're taking some of those I just want to make sure I understand this. If you're taking some of those English standards and putting them into the social studies, so what is that doing to the English department as far as what their loads are?
Sure, their loads are full. There are 5 English teachers, 5 science teachers, 5 math teachers. All of their course loads are full, teaching their content standards. We currently have 4 social studies teachers and have added additional credit requirement.
So if you're taking some of the English standards and putting them into social studies, then that's reducing some of the English. I mean, is it or isn't it, is my question.
Well, I suppose it has, but they have such a great amount of standards to cover that they can't cover them all in their department, and it makes sense to have those standards cross-curricular standards, so that they're being taught in social studies, are being taught in English. They're getting it in different ways.
Yeah, I would say it isn't so much a matter of coverage as it is really making sure that our students reach that level of proficiency. And so at the high school, there's so much emphasis on reading and writing and across the content areas and within disciplines that our work was trying to make sure that we were providing enough opportunities within social studies and within the context of those content courses that students could practice those reading and writing skills and become proficient in them. It wasn't enough just to learn to do literary analysis. They needed to do the informational pieces. I mean, I think it's an interesting question that you raise, and I hope you might bring it up again as other content areas come forward, or I can take it back to the social studies team also, because it's a different approach than I think they've thought of taking in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cal.
Any other questions or comments? Alex?
I mentioned briefly last meeting about an air compressor in the Manchester High School. What?
Manchester High School?
I'm sorry. Maranacook High School.
So I can address that. Okay, so typically, if a teacher has a need, such as a broken air compressor, they would take it to the building administrator, and they would, that piece of equipment is really an instructional piece, so it would be brought up to the building administrator and addressed. Either there is money or there isn't money or whatever. Typically, it doesn't come up at a full board meeting, but we did look into it, and Dwayne went and talked to Jeff Stockford about the piece of equipment, and I believe it's either been ordered or it's in process of being ordered. So, yeah, so it's taken care of in this budget.
Adam?
Sure.
Yeah.
So the study hall piece, we have about 300.
Just a minute, before you go on, I just want to make sure that social studies is covered first. Did you have a question, David, about that?
I'm satisfied.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
The social studies teacher, well, I'm sorry, the study hall position, we have about 370 students at the high school, and we're fortunate to have a literacy interventionist and a math interventionist. That literacy interventionist really has a lot of ground to cover. We're hoping to add another intervention type position, and a cost-effective way in doing that would be to take away study halls from our English teachers and have them provide intervention, doing that with an ed tech, which is roughly, what, 25,000 as opposed to 50,000 or 33,000. So it's a different approach to adding more intervention services.
Adam, are you satisfied?
I just thought when you first came out, you were talking about that this was for math teachers before, at the beginning of the, well.
And I'm sorry if I misspoke.
No, it's no problem. I just, it's just my opinion that if we can do anything to only take staff on when it's absolutely needed, I think that's the best direction to go. I don't know if tutors or anything like that. I know that Maranacook has math tutors that stay after school.
Yep.
And that work with students. Yeah, I don't know if there's English tutors or anything like that, but that's the way I would go.
There are certainly, if the board's recommendation is, not now, that we look at it a different way, then, we'll do that.
I just have a clarification question. Are you still tagging students? Is this like the same kind of thing, or is this something totally?
This would be different.
This is like a regular study hall?
Yeah.
So this person would be like all day or however, just doing study halls?
Right, correct.
Which would free up teachers to work with students?
Correct.
So how would that, like schedule-wise, I just can't get that through my head.
Sure. Well, any given period, we have students who need intervention. There's, currently too many students on our intervention caseload, although we're, again, very fortunate to have an interventionist. Teachers who are available, B1 or, whatever the period may be, would meet with students when they're available from their study hall.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that the student's going to have the same study hall that the teacher would be available. So it may not always work out that student that needs the help would be able to meet with that particular teacher during that period.
May not always, but I think, at least 6 out of 8 periods it would equate that way.
Alex?
To what capacity can the study hall teacher help the children?
Study hall teachers, we have content area teachers at the high school, so they're focused on their content standards. Although super talented, you get students in your study hall with a variety of needs. So it's difficult being a study hall teacher and working with students in content standards from all over the school. So it's very difficult.
So can they help them on like homework and major projects, and
I think
are they going to be knowledgeable enough to actually, not just guide the student, but actually help them go through the process itself?
If we had a study hall ed tech to cover the study hall and freed up English teachers to work individually with students, the English teachers know those standards. So, they could focus on those standards, but it'd be difficult to focus on standards from other content areas.
Would other teachers be available in other subject areas if, for example, to help with math standards or science standards or whatever?
Sure, we can stagger it. The focus is usually English and reading, but we could stagger it to work out for science and social studies. But it may not, as Kathy said, it may not always align with the student. If you're freeing up a science teacher, say G7 or whatever, they can only work with students G7. If there's a student G8 that, that needs science help, that teacher's not available. And would have to go to their study hall teacher, like Alex was asking.
So I have one more question.
Yeah.
So would this be like a scheduled thing, like if I'm the math teacher and I have a study hall, but now I don't have a study hall because I'm working with students, would be like on a black period one day, would I have students assigned to me, or would kids just come if they needed to come?
You do. They'd be assigned out of the guidance office for a focus type study. It would be part of their schedule.
Other questions? Okay. Anything that you want Dwayne to continue to look at in these two areas? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I've also asked Janet and Jeff to talk about the needs and benefits they see to adding a principal.
So some of the things that we'll mention you've heard before. Currently, I'm the principal at Manchester and Mount Vernon, and on paper that's a 60-40 split. I was just glancing at my calendar. I think in the last 10 days I've been at both schools 7 of those days. So even though I'm supposed to be, let's say, at Manchester all day, for whatever reason I have to go out to Mount Vernon and then back. So it doesn't always work out at that, like it is on paper, that you get the 60-40. Jeff and I are both, part of our job is the supervision and evaluation of all staff. So that's teaching staff, ed tech support, administrative assistants in the office, nursing, that all falls under what we need to do. And part of that job is professional development as well. So we are in charge of, staff meetings and planning professional development and those kinds of aspects too. So it's not just like a managing piece, it's also an instructional leader piece. And you've heard, I know Dr. Wolfram's mentioned, other people, if we are in a different building, issues that come up may fall onto lead teachers. So that takes them out of their classroom and away from working with students. Or sometimes we get called because really the situation is beyond what the lead teacher should be addressing, so that takes us out of the school. And then just the day-to-day follow-up with students or following up with teachers doesn't happen in the same consistent kind of way if you're in the building all day. And other people we rely on for support are also part-time. So guidance counselors, nursing staff, and specialists are all part-time people as well. So sometimes the situation is, oh, is Janet in the building? No. Is the guidance counselor? No. Is the nurse? No. So it's, it's stressful and can be a strain for students and staff.
Yeah, I would just echo the same sentiments that Janet was indicating. The other thing I would add is, as you indicate in your meetings a lot, we're looking at trying to build culture within our buildings, and when you're not there much, it's awful hard to do that. The other thing is what you expect us to do is be educational leaders. It is hard to be an educational leader when you're in a building 6 days a month. It's very difficult. And so it's interesting because, as I mentioned to daughter in our monthly meeting I had with her today, I came from a previous district where I had a school of 400 students, over 100 staff. And I was able, I think, to do the job pretty effectively because of the resources I had. I was in one building. I was interacting with my teachers and my staff on a daily basis. I was able to, and students, and I was able to address issues immediately, whether it was with students, teachers, or parents. And oftentimes it can be a juggling act of trying to get back to people. And it is not a even split, as Janet was saying. I've always told whether it's Reedfield or Wayne staff or parents, even if it's not a day I'm there, you call me. So it's on paper it looks nice, but in reality it's not. You're juggling two buildings. So I think the fact of adding another administrator would address a lot of those issues that Janet and I are alluding to.
Can you address the position of principal at Mount Vernon and Wayne? How would that look?
We haven't got that far. I'll be honest with you. That would be a discussion with the superintendent, you know, and the board to discuss how you'd want that.
Presently, we base the time spent, the percentage of the time spent on the percentage of students of the whole. So it would probably be, say, 3 days at Mount Vernon, 2 days at Wayne, a week, something like that.
Other questions, comments? David? And then Jeremy.
An important part of the explanation that was given to me was that it would be, instead of a teacher that's in there focusing on our students, helping them to grow as they need to, all of a sudden and perhaps regularly being called out to deal with an administrative issue, they would be able to remain doing what their job is, and administrative things could be referred more easily to the new principal.
That's correct.
Jeremy.
Yeah, I'm highly supportive of this. I've actually mentioned some of this to Janet before in private meetings. I just think it's critical that the principal be seen by not just the students and not just the parents, but the teachers. You know, a lot of things that happen in the school throughout the day can be addressed if somebody is there. You know, things start to bubble up, rumors spread, people get concerned, whereas if the principal is in the building and they can address the issue right away, I think it resolves it much quicker, much more efficiently, allows the students to focus on learning, the teachers to focus on teaching, and administrators making sure that the building and the school and everybody is running like a well-oiled machine.
Other comments? Alex?
I would also like to say I support this entirely as well. The split between Mount Vernon and Wayne, is that like a 40-60, a 70-30?
We haven't sat down. We haven't sat down and figured out the percentages, but it would be based on the percentages of students. So yeah, I think it would probably be a 60-40 split.
What is the enrollment? I know I've got it someplace.
Yeah, it's
very quickly.
It's changed a little bit. Like my first year here, I had 147 students at Mount Vernon and around in the 190 at Manchester. Right now, I think it's lower than it's been in a while. I'm just over 300 students.
Okay, so Mount Vernon has?
It's around 120, and Manchester's 82, I think.
And Wayne?
68.
68, and Reedfield is 209.
Yeah. What I was trying to determine was the total for Mount Vernon and Wayne, and I wasn't specific enough about that. I'm sorry. To see what that ratio would be. Yeah.
188. 182.
Okay. I knew it was in here, but I didn't want to take the time to look. Yes, Adam.
I think it's just really important for the public to know that having another elementary school principal is the price of the way our elementary schools are positioned. And unless they want to, in the future, move forward to a bigger campus with those schools combined, this is the price to give our kids the best education, and I fully support it.
Any other questions or comments? Sean?
I echo what Adam says. It does come at a price, and if you're gonna have this many elementary schools, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I do support it, but I struggle with adding administration when we have kids who aren't meeting standards, who we've heard time and time again, who we could use more intervention in our schools. We heard tonight we could use more in our high school. And I have a hard time adding more administration. I mean, it does have impact on the students, I do get that, but I believe an interventionist has a more direct impact. But it is the cost. We're paying $100,000 for an administrator because people in communities chose to have their individual elementary schools. And that's the cost of it. In some ways, well, if we're gonna have these, there is a cost to our students because our communities are choosing to have these individual elementary schools. I feel that students are losing out on opportunities, but until the parents in those communities make the choice, these are the costs we're gonna pay.
Other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Does anyone have a question that we should go get Sean for? Any questions about equipment, maintenance? He said feel free to go and get him, so if any come up, please let me know. Adam?
Just the tennis courts are in there again, and every year, you guys, it's a hard thing for you to get them fixed, right? Just people that do it.
Yes.
I guess, and that's the money left over that there weren't any disasters this year in the budget. That's allowing the purchase of the other equipment. Is that correct? I guess the other thing, and this would, whether it was in the facilities report or something from the architect, was there anything said about the students that have to walk around the middle school in the winter? Was that in the facilities report?
We talked about that.
And is there, I notice it's not in the budget this year. Are we gonna get ourselves into any legal issue there? Just as far as having kids move from
Instead of having the stairs.
Yes.
That program has been moved back to the high school, so that's not happening.
And we did talk about kids who may go that way to get down to the fields. They are not supposed to be going that way, and we did talk about that.
There are signs posted that say to not go down that hill.
So the architecture was supposed to come back today. Why not?
We didn't ask them about that.
Well, you were supposed to figure out this bond and what was going to go into the different categories.
Right. We didn't say today.
When we say, what would your interpretation?
As soon as he could, but not necessarily today.
Well, somehow the public needs to know that bond. And to put it off is not right.
We will have public meetings about that, about the bond once we're ready to go out for it. But we're not planning to go out in the near future, I don't think.
No, I don't think it's an immediate.
Well, I think the it was a general conversation on Monday, and I believe that the facilities committee will need to meet again and really pin down exactly what they went. We did some brainstorming, and I think the facilities committee will need to relook at items for the bond.
I thought we had put them in different categories.
Well, we did, but
Tentatively. But he was going to go back and re-look at all the projects and make sure that we had all of the projects that were necessary, make sure that they were in that figure for the bond, and then come back with his recommendations.
How many more budget sessions
Tonight and Tuesday. Tuesday, we have to vote.
The vote has to be on Tuesday in order to get the warrant articles ready for the annual meeting.
No.
Oh, no.
No. No. We will not be expecting a vote on a bond issue until somewhere in next year, probably, next June. Yeah.
So one of the things on this page 6 that we moved out of next year's operations is $180,000, and we put it in fiscal year 18. That means the following year, that comes back up to haunt us.
Well, it depends on what you have for projects. I mean, projects is...
Maintenance contracts, are these one-year contracts or three-year?
Those aren't just contracts, those are any type of maintenance projects. I mean, they may be contracts, but they're not like a contract with Siemens to work on to do the maintenance on our boiler. They could be contracts for a specific project. So those change every year depending on the needs. And the architect needs assessment that was done is also giving us some good insight as to picking some of the smaller projects that we won't put into a bond, but we can prioritize those and tick off some of the smaller ones in our yearly maintenance work.
That's a lot of money that we found for this year.
I think probably some of that was...
How you like that? Found for this year.
Some of that was in the 250 extra.
Right, some of that was actually cut early on, and then some of it we did, I mean, what we found, what I just took out of next year's budget to take out of this year's was $10,300 in equipment and $31,400 in projects. It wasn't the full $180,000. A lot of that $180,000 was cut after our first round.
So, my question now is, what are your thoughts about the budget at this point, and what do we need the administrators to go back and do between now and next Tuesday when we have to take the final vote? Alex?
In comparison to other districts, what are their budget increases looking like?
I
can't do
couldn't tell you.
I don't know. I believe that Augusta was up over 5%. I haven't heard. Everybody's pretty much in the same place in their budget development, so.
I think it'll swing.
Other areas, other comments? Are you happy? Are you not happy? Are there places that we need to look at to cut? Kathy?
So I'm not particularly happy yet. And I actually spoke with all of the select people from Mount Vernon just to see if I could get a feel for where they were and where the citizens of Mount Vernon might be. And they weren't particularly happy either, and would like to see a lot less of an increase. And I'm not really sure at what point, where that's going to come from, but they're feeling that we're close to reaching the tipping point with the voters. And I mean, I don't know for sure. I'm quite familiar with the people of Mount Vernon, and they've been very supportive, but I do feel that if not in the next couple years, very soon, we are going to be reaching the tipping point there. And I go back to, if we're going to keep our 4 small town schools, then they're going to have to pay for it. But and I don't know if this is even the right time to think about this, but I'm wondering if maybe it's time to reconsider the pay for play for athletics, or some other ways that we can maybe get some more revenue. But I think I'd like to try to figure out a way that we could get this budget down a little bit more.
Jeremy?
Can anybody tell me what that sports fee brought in terms of revenue the last time. I mean, I can tell you, and I'm not at all opposed to it. One of the things I remember when I was in school that we did was we had a fee. But one of the things that I think a lot of families were concerned about, particularly those who had multiple children, is that they didn't want to be paying $500. So the school that I went to capped it per family. So it was, I don't know, $100, $75 per family. That way we weren't asking individual families to shoulder a really large portion of that. But do you know what that raised?
So Bridget says 45,000. Adam?
I'm going to sound like an absolute broken record. But every year that we add staff, and unless they're incredibly needed, we are going to be paying benefits and salary increases the next year. And we are not a board that goes back and says, this program isn't working, this position isn't needed. And because I don't think that's the way Maranacook, we're going forward. But I'm just saying, give the teachers the tools. That doesn't necessarily mean a person showing up to their room once in a while. Just give them the tools that they need.
So is there a specific area that you would want the administrators to look at?
I don't think the study hall monitor is worth the price. I don't think the integration list, it's a person looking over 5 schools, is still worth the price. I just think that our classroom teachers are where the rubber hits the road, and I think we can use our funding better than to create positions that I don't know are cost effective for the students or for the community.
Okay. Other comments? Other area? Do you agree, disagree? David?
I applaud the efforts of the administration and the teachers and the rest of us to contain costs, to reduce costs. As we've discussed, whether it's with the needs of the students or the needs of the facilities, there are some things that appear to be falling through the cracks to a degree, not because we want them to, but just because we've had to keep control so tightly on everything for so long. And so I think we have gotten this budget to a good place. That doesn't mean that we can't look very carefully at how we're using our staff and what positions are needed and how they're used, and work with the teachers, the staff from top to bottom, from left to right, to look at our organization, our school district as a whole, and how can we make it more efficient. Those are important things, but I'm very pleased with the way we've gotten this down to where it is now, and am supportive of going forward as it is now.
Thank you. Other? Yep.
I was on the committee that explored the sports fees, and I looked at those numbers that came out that was provided to us, and I really didn't see an increase of kids participating in sports. And we never, from what I understand, did band and chorus also get a fee as well? No. Okay, so it was just sports. I did not see the numbers fluctuate at all, whether it was a fee to play sports or not. The numbers have pretty much stayed the same. And in the meeting, I was told that if we took these fees away, that more kids would participate. Now, I could be wrong, but I would like to ask the superintendent if you could bring those numbers to us and tell us definitely if there was an increase. They were given to us, but I'm just saying, if it wasn't, no one really sat down with us and said, okay, here are the numbers, and you see here it went up. When I looked at it myself, I pretty much saw a flat line.
I think that's what you see.
There was no big increase of
No.
all these kids that were
No.
going to play sports.
No.
And I'm also hearing that a lot of parents are very tired of fundraising as well. And we have the uniform costs that came up, and $45,000 is a lot of money. And I would like to ask all of us, maybe we should reconsider that, adding fees, participation fees for sporting events back in. I think it might actually even alleviate things for the parents who have to constantly fundraise.
Did it make a difference in fundraising when we had the fee?
No, okay.
Okay, that would be a big question.
That's another question.
Yeah, yeah. Lucas?
I personally will not vote to put back in fees. Although it may not have had an impact, it's still one less thing that families need to worry about. I would actually scrap sports programs before bringing that fee back in entirely, personally.
Okay. Jeremy?
What did that $45,000 pay for?
It basically is just an additional revenue source to bring down our local dollars. It does help offset the expenses for co- and extracurricular activities, but it's not directly tied to it. It's just on our revenue sheet, it will just show as an additional revenue, so it brings down our local dollars needed. Goes into the
So it
general
has
fund.
nothing to do with the uniforms or
Nope.
equipment or anything?
David?
Was there a format or an avenue for families that were cash-strapped to get an exemption from that?
They could apply for a scholarship.
And
They also could apply to the Maranacook Education Foundation.
And coaches were cognizant of those who needed assistance, and we guided them to those sources.
We did get several people who applied, so.
Wendy?
Could the fees be directed to help them get uniforms and things they need too? I mean, or would it just go in a general fund just for keeping taxes down?
Sorry. I mean, it's an additional revenue source. So if you wanted the uniforms to go back in, you'd put the uniforms back in on the expenditure side, and then you'd put the $45,000 back in on the revenue side, but basically that nets out to a $35 decrease to the taxpayers. You know, so I mean, yeah, you can increase your revenues, but then if you turn around and increase your expenses too, you're kind of negating part of the additional revenue that you're receiving for the townspeople.
Jeremy?
What was the per athlete participant fee?
I think at the high school it was $75 per activity, 50 at the middle school, I believe. Yeah, people are shaking their heads. I don't. So, and that included some of the co-curricular, not the ones that were academically driven, like the math team. I don't believe they paid for the math team or speech and debate, but anybody who was in the plays, they had to pay the activity fee, and along with sports teams had to pay the activity fee.
Adam?
Yeah, and just having a high school student, middle school students, I think there wasn't a fee last year, and I still think I spent too much money on their extracurricular sports. It's just the amount of things that come along with being in a sports team at Maranacook are insane. Just to have your kid belong on the team, just with all the extra money that they need, it's just crazy. And
For example, what extra?
They give
food?
They give gifts to each other. they buy extra uniforms, they go to extra camps. It's just nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And that's one of the things about the whole fundraising thing, it's just a weird culture shift than how it was when I was in school. It's just different culture.
Jeremy, did you have a?
Could I make a motion about reinstating the fee? Would now be an appropriate moment to do that?
You could. Are we? And then we can determine if we're ready to talk about to take action on that.
Yeah, I just would like to drive a decision one way or the other on this. So I'll make a motion that we reinstate the fees. Certainly open to other ideas. I'm just going to throw out a $100 family cap.
Okay. Is there a second?
Sure.
Okay, David seconded it. Discussion? Adam?
I just think to me, it's a culture thing. And I said this when we did it before. Even if it stops one kid from playing because he doesn't want to go, even though his parents might have money, maybe they don't have money for him or her. And if it stops that kid from playing, I think it ruins the culture of the school. I think it's a bad line to say, the kids already have to pay enough just to be on the team. Maranacook doesn't provide a crap load of equipment. This isn't even including equipment that the kid needs to play. The amount of money to play sports now is just nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So there's no way on God's green earth I would ever support bringing back the fee.
Jeremy?
Yeah, I hear that concern, but we're trying to balance here. In one respect, we're saying we've got to make sure we're driving, the cost of this budget down as much as possible so that taxpayers aren't burdened with something. And then in the next breath, we're saying, but we don't want to charge anyone. So I guess I just feel like we've got to figure out an opportunity to raise some revenue if we feel like these positions and these other priorities on page 5 here are priorities. It has to be funded somehow, and if people are expressing concerns, say Mount Vernon, about the costs of whatever it was, 4.8, 4.6% property tax increase, I'm just trying to come up with revenue sources that might resolve that, and I'm just not hearing any other ideas to do that.
Wendy?
What things will pay participation fees again? It's not just sports, you said plays and?
On the co-curricular side, it's mostly just the plays, because the math team doesn't, the speech and debate doesn't, because those are really academically driven. So on the co-curricular side, it's pretty much just the plays are the other things that would pay the participation fee, and then all the sports.
Okay, thank you.
Sean?
It seems to be fairly common for schools to have participation fees, and I agree, we've got to come up with revenue sources if folks want to fund all these things. I've thrown an idea out there. I'm not going to hide it. I'm not in support of really expanding administration, but I can see where I've lost that argument. Pretty wise that I've lost that argument, but when we come back here after next year and we automatically have a $200,000 increase because of salaries and state revenues are down for education, well, we're going to have to make some cuts somewhere, and I'm sure for one not going to be arguing to make cuts for students, direct impact on the students. But, so I guess I'm open for it. So the $100, it'd be $100 a family, and would just pick like $50 a student. I don't know. I don't know how to, but I get it's tough. Could we?
Yeah. Just to let you know, if we cap it at $100 per family, you're not going to bring in anywhere near $45,000. We had kids playing 3 sports and being in the play and charging $75 per student. So those kids were paying, upwards of $225 to $300 per student. So if you're going to cap it at $100 per family, you're not going to bring in anywhere close to $45,000.
That'd be like 15,
Would
right?
that,
It'll be like 15, I mean,
Probably.
realistically, because you got a lot of people doing 2 activities or more.
Yeah.
and the $100 cap, is that per year for?
Well thought out math behind this.
Okay.
But not all sports are paying the fee. That's the other thing that I heard. When I was in the auditorium that night, when we voted on getting rid of the fees, not all sports are paying
I think lacrosse.
the fees that I understood.
I think the only ones that didn't pay a fee are the ones that were,
I think just lacrosse.
that the parents already pay.
Right.
Well,
The district doesn't support it.
The district
Doesn't
doesn't
support
support it, and
100%.
so the full price comes from.
yeah, we partially fund football and hockey, so I believe those sports teams were paying the fee. Lacrosse is 100% funded by the parents, and so I believe they were not paying the fee in lacrosse.
Adam?
I just think that there's an incredible value for high school students to try things out. Just try them out. I mean, find out who you are, find out what you like. And if you're putting a fee on a kid's new experience, I mean, once they get out of high school, they're on their own. But I just think as a community, it's just such a awesome thing to be able to let them try stuff. Let them try stuff at no cost. If the community can, I mean, I see an incredible benefit to the lives of our students if we don't hold down what they can do.
David?
Somewhat echoing that, we all hear and I believe know that the sports have a major positive impact for the students, including affecting their scholastic abilities and supporting them both in community and in school. And so whatever we can do to support that as part of their curriculum in a way is important. How we do that, yes, needs to be debated. How much we spend on it, just as with everything else, needs to be considered and debated. But I strongly agree that it's very important for our students.
Kathy?
I agree that athletics and co-curricular are important, but I also think that we need to have a budget that is a benefit to all students, not just the students that are athletic.
Are we ready to vote? All those, yes, David?
Is there a way to table it and continue the discussion?
You can make a motion that it be tabled.
I'm happy to withdraw the motion. I just wanted to drive an end to the debate.
I'm not making a motion.
Okay.
Like
Jeremy?
I'll withdraw the motion to allow further consideration.
Is there a second to the withdrawals? Because it was seconded as well.
Second. Let's move on.
Okay, all those in favor?
Here's what I found on the web first.
No, there's seconds on that thing.
I never used Siri. I have never used Siri. I guess. Okay, I'm not sure where we are now.
Vote on recall.
Okay, how many would favor recalling the motion? Okay, we are recalled. On on previous sheets, there has been a section where we could consider things that we might consider cutting. That's not on this one. I'm not sure if there are still things that administrators would allow us to consider. I mean, we can consider anything, but there are some things that administrators have in the past said they could live without if we did not fund it. It was basically the ed tech and what's that?
Do you have those in front of you?
So I believe that the board voted a couple meetings ago to keep the technology integrationist as a priority. So it was moved to the priority list, just as, not that it can't be moved off that, but the elementary principal was identified by A-Team as a priority. We could cut out the tennis court repair. That would be about $30,000. We could purchase the truck and the mule, sounds funny, mule, on a lease purchase, which would cost $32,000. Do you want to explain that?
You still got to pay for it.
Yes, we would, Gary. To purchase it outright, in the budget right now, it's in there for $48,000. We could do a lease purchase over 3 years, and then we would only have to pay $16,000 in next year's budget, and we could do $32,000 on the lease purchase, so, and spread it out over 3 years rather than just pay it all in 1 year.
The high school social studies teacher is a priority due to the increase of the credits that we require. Somebody's got to teach those. I talked to Dwayne today about possibly moving financial literacy to just being available to juniors and seniors. However, there are a lot of juniors and seniors who are taking dual enrollment classes, CATSI classes that aren't available. They wouldn't be able to fit it in their schedules. So we really do need that social studies teacher. The high school ed tech study hall.
On the last sheet that we had, it was half-time.
Right, we talked about decreasing the budget by that position would be a decrease of $33,500 to just wipe out that position. If we took that position down to half-time, it would be around $16,750. So cutting that in half, so.
Yeah.
Decrease. So really, those are our options at this point.
What is the
Diane,
summer?
did you have something to say?
The summer grounds, maintenance summer grounds expansion is $5,000. Okay, yep.
I'd like to make a motion that we explore the lease purchase option.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay. Discussion about,
Explain that one more time.
yep.
I think I understand that one.
Basically, instead of buying it outright, we take out a loan for 3 years and only have to pay the first year's payment.
If I did my math, it'd be about a
$1,000, yes. Yeah.
So if we're taking a loan, how is it not more money than buying it outright? It's $48,000 to buy it outright?
Yes.
How could it be the exact same spread over 3 years if we're taking out a loan?
Well, I mean, we're using ballpark figures.
Okay.
You know, and our interest rates are usually around 3%, so we have very low interest rates. They're lease purchases, they're a special type of interest rate for municipal type loan borrowing.
Okay.
So that would save roughly $32,000.
Correct.
How bad are the tennis courts?
He's here.
Sean.
Sean?
Go back to what?
I was on them in the fall for 5 minutes and it seemed fine to me.
They're cracked. The water's starting to get down in the tar. We need to do a surface on the top, and each year it keeps going up and up, so the longer we wait, the more it's gonna cost.
And the 30 grand is a full resurfacing?
Yes, on the top, yes.
Has it already been filled with a crack?
We fill it, but I mean, just every year you have to keep doing it, and it does need a new surface. I think it's needed it for 3 or 4 years now, and
Yeah.
it just keeps getting put off and off.
Yeah. We have a motion on the floor to explore the lease purchase for the truck and the mule. Any other discussion on that?
What does explore mean? Are we doing it or not?
No, you have to bring it up to a vote after we get the interest rate.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor of exploring the lease purchase by next week? It would have to be by next Tuesday.
I mean, there's nothing to explore.
Okay.
Either we do it over as a lease purchase, or we buy it outright. Those are or we eliminate it from the budget. But I mean, that's the three options.
Make
Yeah.
a motion that we lease purchase it.
Okay. Okay, amend the motion to,
Amend the motion that we purchase the mule and the truck with the lease purchase.
is there a second?
A second.
Okay.
Yeah.
All those in favor of that motion? Okay. Lease purchase. All right.
So go back to the ed tech study
Yeah,
hall.
To go back,
Study
yeah,
hall, ed tech.
the ed tech study hall. I'd like, yep, David?
I thought it was good to hear from you, and then
Okay. I'd like some creative scheduling to be looked at in order to cover those study halls with, in a way that at least half-time to bring down another 16. Any other comments? David?
Is that on? I like the idea of always looking at creative scheduling. That's important. But I make the assumption that that has been looked at already. And
hope so.
I like the idea of bringing in, if in any business, if you want a lower level thing done, having someone of a lower level skill. You don't bring in someone that's higher skill to sweep the floor. You bring in that person to do the higher skill things. I like the idea of bringing in someone, an ed tech, who is at a lower skill level than the teachers, to do that. And to free the teachers to do what they're best at, to give the students that support that they need.
Have you looked at how that the teachers would be scheduled next year to increase the time that they would have for helping students?
We're in the process of building the schedule now. Diane's in the process of building the schedule now. I don't anticipate it being a difficulty. If we have that person, it'll free up teachers to provide intervention. So I don't anticipate it being a difficulty creating that schedule.
Okay. Their time wouldn't get filled up with like department meetings and that sort of thing.
No, that takes that's already allocated to other parts of their schedule.
Okay. Other areas that you would like the administrators to look at?
Moving on.
Okay, I don't hear any. I'm not sure what the direction of the board is at this point, other than to continue to try to reduce it. That is what I have heard. And I've heard no one say, oh, I've heard one person say that they're happy with where things are. Yeah. I've heard more people say that they would like to continue to reduce. Yes, David?
To repeat, sort of, reductions and savings are continually important. But last week, our point was we've got to get below 5%, and we're below 5%. More would be great on every level of government, including our small level. But within what we've got, I think a very good job has been done.
Any comments? Our direction. I too feel good that we have made as many cuts as we have, that we've been able to find as many savings, and I guess I would just continue to take another look and see if there's anything else that can be cut. Administrators. Kathy?
So I am glad that we looked at doing that lease purchase, because that's going to bring it down a little bit. So I'm happy with that. So, and I do appreciate all the work that the administrators and everyone has done, because I know this process, and I know it's really hard. So I really do appreciate all you've done, and the work that we've done here to discuss all this too. I do have a question. Are we done with talking about the pay-to-play fee? Or I don't know where we're at with that.
It was,
There's no motion.
there's no motion, it was withdrawn.
Withdrawn, so we're
So we're done.
back to zero.
Yeah, Adam?
I'm just looking at how fixed are the costs for, like, I see cold patch, crack fill, like in nearly every school. So I'm assuming that gets done yearly or pretty close?
Yeah.
So you guys have a very good idea how much that costs?
Sean's
I just
got-
want to know how flexible some of these numbers
Sean's
are.
gotten estimates.
Okay.
You want to talk about cold patch, Sean?
It doesn't need.
It does get done every year. Our parking lots are in bad shape, very bad shape, and I hate to skimp on the cold patch and the crack fill. I mean, we can do half of it. I mean, that's up to you, I guess. But I mean, I'd rather do it all, every parking lot. Ask for the moon, I guess, you know. But we do need the crack fill and the cold patch.
Barry?
So Sean, when I was driving in on the Millard Road, is that what it is? That big tractor we used to have up in the superintendent's yard, is that still available?
That's not ours.
That's not ours.
Oh.
That's the guy that plows the roads.
I wonder if you can't take that high berm, because I could see where the water's coming off that road and it's
Yes.
too high, and cut that off with that plow that he had on there?
That plow's got a rubber cutting edge. It wouldn't cut it.
But he has,
But
to
it does-
take the plow off,
He does have a bucket that could cut that, yes.
why don't we get that cut off of there so that the road, when it does get paved, will be at the right height, so that we don't deteriorate the new road?
If we do a new road, or when we do a new road, that does have to be done, absolutely. It has to be done.
Has to be done. I can see that.
Like we talked about it, the water just runs, today,
Right.
the water just run right down the middle of the road. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or concerns? Okay.
So we're down to principal reports.
Yep, we are at the reports. Any questions for the principals on their reports?
So I have some comments. I think the middle school there, going down to Washington DC, great job getting everybody to go down there. I think that's cool that you're going down there to present the math to that board.
Oh, that's not the middle school.
Well, it's in the middle school report, under page 2.
Are you on the elementary report?
Elementary.
Elementary report, yes. Yes, we are sending a team down to present at the National Conference in Washington DC, so.
I thought that was cool.
Yeah, it's great. We went last year to San Antonio, and they've been invited back to present again this year, so.
That's great.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the principals?
So on the...
Adult community education, finance manager, health center, special ed. Okay.
Under special ed,
It's okay.
you're back to 3 and 5. Discussion is, it's still going to come up, but funding has never been written in your papers.
Funding hasn't been outlined in the proposal fully, so it's still, I think I listed in the report, but it's still up for debate. That was some major...
A major stumbling block, right? That's everybody's having trouble with?
Yeah, that's one of the answers.
Curriculum assessment.
So I read this and it says total testing time approximately 7 hours. I said, that's a lot of class time.
And we have no control over that because that's state testing.
And so we must have some reports on some of these things. And I haven't seen Mr. Hogan's matrix lately.
We will not get MEA reports until next fall, correct? That's correct.
Correct. Summer or fall.
So we didn't get any results on the NUIA?
Yes, you had that report.
That was last week.
Okay. Last
Okay.
week we didn't say anything about it, but I
Super-
read them this week.
Superintendent of schools, any questions for her? And staff association, there's no. Please note any upcoming committees, dates, and I'd like a motion to go into executive
Make a
session.
motion that we go into executive session to discuss employment of officials, appointees, and employees pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A.
We will be going to conference room B.